Okay, so could you introduce yourself? Can you tell about your working experience as a teacher?
My name is Tom McLean, and my working experience as a teacher, I think that it goes back prior to being a qualified school teacher, because I used to work teaching sailing, and so I think that many of the examples of teaching sailing and outdoor sports are transferable, they're very practical. As a teacher, I qualified and worked for a year in Scotland after my college qualification, and then I went to work in Gambia in West Africa for 2 years, and now I work at the international school. Well, actually I had a year in Budapest where I taught English and worked as a cover teacher in international school, and then also I now work as a teacher in the international school in Manila. Since I've been a school teacher, it's primarily been geography, but I teach in the social studies department, so we have to do often have to teach a number of subjects. I currently teach anthropology, world religions, and geography at a number of different levels.
How do you find the difference between teaching in Scotland, Gambia, and the Philippines? They are quite different countries from...
I guess they're quite different countries, but they're also quite different types of school. Scotland was a government school. It was a very well-run government school. It was good to work there, but you dealt with a genuine community where it was not in a city, it was in a small town, and the whole community sent their children to that school, whereas quite often people with money would send their children to a private school, and it would only be the people without money or not particularly well off that would go. In this school, the whole community went, and so it made it into a really interesting school, and it was well run as a consequence. I liked working there. It was also, perhaps there were problems with being part of government bureaucracy, in the sense that it didn't have as much independence and you had a lot of paperwork to deal with, because of the fact that it's regulated by the government. That had its downsides, but on the other hand, it's also, Scotland has quite a good education system, and the UK obviously a well-developed country. Therefore, the standard of teaching and standard of resources and standard of training of teachers was high. You also, when it comes to compare that with Gambia, Gambia was a private school. It could do what it wanted, but it was very poorly run, poorly organised. It was expensive by local standards, but the resources were terrible. Most of this was due to bad management. The students there had a sort of sense of privilege. They abused their privilege in many respects, really. Although they had, access to the best teachers and the best teaching in the Gambia, they used it badly. And this was not a problem necessarily with the students, but it was the whole community, the school board. It just didn't function. It was dysfunctional. I liked working there a lot, because it was the dysfunctionality was interesting. The students were extremely exuberant, so they were good fun. But I mean, some of the things that happened there were extremely like something out of a comic book, not a real life story. And so, just quickly to summarise where I am now, I'm in an international school in Manila, and here I have, I guess, the best of what I had in the Scottish Government School, but with independence. I mean, we have even better resources and even better, I think, training, but you have independence, so you're not bound by so much bureaucracy and paperwork.
So why did you decide to become a teacher?
A combination of things, pragmatic and philosophical. I wanted to do a job that I felt was giving me a sense of purpose. I didn't feel like money was a good enough end goal. I wanted to do something which helped people and work towards doing something positive with my life and other people's lives and the planet, if you want to get really big and broad about it. But I also was pragmatic in the sense that I wanted enough money, I wanted enough status, I wanted enough holidays, I wanted to be able to travel abroad, and I wanted to have security. So it was a combination of kind of altruistic, philosophical points and pragmatic ways of dealing with life.
Mm-hmm. So what's your teaching philosophy, educational philosophy?
I don't know if I would be able to say that I have a clearly defined educational philosophy. I tend to pick things from different...
What kind of teacher you are?
Big picture and inclusive, I like people to understand. I'm not interested in people remembering things without a sense of purpose, and for me the sense of purpose is to really make the world a better place. Otherwise I don't think there's much point. I guess the reality of that is students have to be able to fit in with the way the world is, as well as hopefully improve the world. So what I recognise is that there's a need to prepare students for what they'll step into, but I hope I inspire them with ideas and desire to improve upon what they find, as opposed to just accept it and regurgitate it.
Mm-hmm. And
in terms of teaching philosophy, that would be I expect this. I want the students to learn from each other as much as from themselves, or from me rather, and from themselves as much as from me. I don't like to be at the front and talking all the time, although I do enjoy it. I do enjoy the kind of stage and drama and having the audience and being able to coordinate the atmosphere of the room. I like that, but the reality is I think it's far more effective if students are much more actively involved in their own learning, and so as much as possible I want to try and make it enjoyable, fun, where they can interact with it and it's not just some one-dimensional spiel like this is.
mm-hmm. So how do you do your classes? If you in a way, I'm confused. Sometimes you are saying that you like for them to be involved, but sometimes you like to be the one who is controlling.
Well, teaching's a combination of there's times when I have to deliver information or instructions, and when I do that, I want to make sure that I deliver it as effectively as possible. And there is a place in life for good speeches. Everyone likes a good speech. I mean, most people are aware of the TED Talks website. These people just stand up and speak, and it's interesting. So there's plenty of place in life in teaching for people who can communicate ideas well. However, it's got to be much more than that, and I guess that's why I would say that I'd like the balance of my teaching to be is that the students are spending less time listening to me and more time trying stuff. I mean, in some ways I have to present ideas and present instructions, and then they have to discover those ideas and mess around with them and see how it works for them and discuss them. So how I might set that up would be that I would talk and explain a concept if necessary. I would try and provide them with the knowledge necessary for them to actually discuss and interact with it and maybe apply it into a different context. And then I would give them a hands-on activity where it's basically as contextualised in their life as is possible. The ultimate types of activity I think are really ones where students are doing things which are genuinely real world. We often hear the authentic tasks and authentic assessments, but sometimes they're just make-believe authentic tasks, they're pretend authentic tasks. I like to have students doing type of, I guess, almost work experience or genuine work where what they do has genuine meaning, and sometimes ways they can do that are to collect data to improve the school, like the current project with working with the school's security and buildings director, where they're trying to establish the school's ecological footprint and then use that data to improve efficiency, which will then lead to bills being decreased, and also lead to us using less energy, which essentially again makes the world a little bit better place. So that's then making a genuine difference, and that touches upon geography and it touches upon other subjects too. So it's that interdependent, interconnected learning. So philosophy is trying to get students to do meaningful things which they understand the meaning of.
Okay, you are doing a lot of projects. Can you tell me which is your favorite you did recently?
Favorite? I don't know. It depends upon how they work. Currently, one of my favorite projects is that I'm having a court case where we're putting Tom Cruise, John Travolta, and a number of Scientologists on trial, and we are discussing whether or not they are a religion or a cult. It's a courtroom trial. The prosecution team must bring forward witnesses to essentially discredit the Scientologists, and the defence team must obviously use their witnesses, the Scientologists themselves, to defend Scientology. And the overall question is, or the overall accusation, if you like, the trial is based on the statement that Scientology is not a religion, it's a dangerous cult. And what's interesting about that is that actually Scientology would fit both definitions if you were to look at, anthropological definition of religion and anthropological definition of a cult. And so that brings all sorts of questions in mind for the students, and I found them to be extremely engaged with that task because it's challenged them on an intellectual level, but it's based on a documentary they watched which was dramatic, and it includes movie stars and people they're aware of, so that they have a level of, I guess, contextual interest in it. So that's my favourite at the moment, because it's a class which is particularly difficult, and they are responding very well to that. And that's sort of satisfying when a class which is hard to motivate seniors who've already gone to college, students who are not succeeding in school, a very mixed class. It's very motivating when that kind of group works together on a project like that.
Okay, and how do you assess your students?
Mixture, there's a mixture of ways. Observing them and giving them feedback verbally is assessment. It depends what you mean, whether you mean summative assessment or formative assessment. Summative assessment, I guess, is always a mixture of, there's some content they need to be able to learn. For example, they need to learn certain amounts of subject-specific terminology. If they don't understand what a cult is, or a doctrine is, or a ritual is, or a myth is, they can't really define religion and don't know what they're talking about. So they need to learn a certain amount of that, which involves memorization, and I will assess them via quizzes for that type of stuff. But when it comes to genuine understanding, quite often what you have to get them to do is to show how they can apply this learning in other circumstances. And that's why the courtroom trial situation is a useful task for getting engaged in higher level thinking, because you can't gauge analysis through quizzes and tests, that kind of thing. It doesn't provide them with the opportunity to adequately demonstrate the awareness of how each of these ideas interconnect, really. So a combination of, a million different types of ways of assessing people, really. It's the only way to deal with it.